Now, one of the biggest news stories of the year was the FeesMustFall campaign. The country saw a wave of massive uprisings, with students victorious in getting a 0% fee increase for 2016. We now take an in-depth look at this historic campaign. Today, in the first of 4 parts, we look at the genesis of student activism.
(1976), a turning point in the country's history. Thousands of students took to Soweto's dusty streets, resisting a system that forced them to study in Afrikaans. 2 years earlier, a new law had been put in place, the Afrikaans Medium Decree of 1974, forcing all black students to use Afrikaans as the main medium of instruction.
We then became aware that this is a language that we are not very conversant with. And on our side also, it's a language that's not international. So we felt that we cannot now be taught in Afrikaans all subjects. So we didn't want it. And because our parents were sort of cowed down since the 60s, they were afraid. We were aware that we can't really rely on our parents to solve this problem for us. So we decided that it's important to protest against this because it's going to affect us and affect our future.
On the morning of the 16th of June, students walked towards the Orlando Stadium. They were met with fierce police brutality. Their courage and fearless determination was unparalleled.
In our minds, what was going on, it was we needed this mental or psychological liberation. We knew that you cannot get your physical liberation without being liberated mentally. And that kind of consciousness in itself contributed to the courage that we actually took us to the street at that era.
Well, courage, I guess, it always comes naturally because we don't have much responsibility as a student. You don't have a family to think of. You don't think of, my daughter, my son. So you are almost alone. So when you think that this is not right, you want to challenge it right away.
More than 170 students were killed by police, with more than 700 injured. One of the first victims, 13-year-old Hector Peterson.
Where he was shot, it was about 200 meters away from where we were, where he was shot, and because they were shooting now, and then it was all riots. So we then heard that they've killed Hector, or they've shot a young boy, and that's when the student became more rough.
It was that day when students spoke in one voice. And they were not only speaking in one voice on that day. There was a lot of planning, that took place, led by the South African student movement of those days. And this was just a culmination of a lot of student planning resulting into that kind of insurrection.
The Soweto riots spread to other townships countrywide. Unprecedented anger among young black South Africans. It signaled the beginning of the end for the racist apartheid government and gave fresh impetus to exiled liberation movements. The class of 76 changed the course of history. Almost 4 decades later, a new generation of student activists. But this time, it's not about inferior education, but access to affordable education. Anger about financial exclusion started simmering on campuses in 2010. a government funding scheme for disadvantaged higher education students proved inadequate. NSFAS was fraught with inconsistencies from the outset. As universities' enrollments burgeoned, demand outstripped funding from state coffers. Currently, only students with a family income of less than 13,000 Rand a month are eligible for the loan. But parents earning more than that can't necessarily afford university fees. Rising living costs exclude many students from middle-income households. Boosting the fund radically over the years didn't appease students. Thousands of deserving candidates are turned away annually. This discontent with NSFAS set the tone for the Fees Must Fall campaign.
When Mandela said never, never, never again, I believed him that I will never see 1976 again. It brought tears, particularly the scenes in Cape Town in Parliament. That to me was like, here's history repeating itself.
The precursor to this unprecedented chapter in post-94 history was the Roads Must Fall campaign. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.
#FeesMustFall.